Hey there, and thank you for checking out how to play Brutality. This is a video that will show you how to play this brand new board game. We'll go over rules, we'll go over movesets, and we'll go over a little bit of strategy on how to play the game, and hopefully it'll be over pretty quick so you can get in there and start playing the game. The overall objective is you want to kill the other team. Everybody has their own health threshold. You want to get that health threshold from, say, 20 down to 0. And once you kill both people on the other side, there's a winner. So let's talk about actions. Actions in Brutality are things that allow you to move your character or have your character do some sort of attack. In this case, we have the God Killer. The God Killer can either move, that's one possible action you could use. You could use Brutal Impact, which allows him to stab somebody and then move them somewhere else on the battlefield next to him. Or you could use Shield Blast, where he takes his shield and a ray of light comes out and knocks people back 2 spaces. The player then gets the opportunity to pick which 2 of those 3 actions they would like to use. Some characters have 3 abilities, some have 2, but you only get 2 options to pick of your actions. So make sure you're utilizing them well. You can't use the same action twice. So for example, I couldn't use a move action twice in a row or Brutal Impact twice in a row. I would have to move, then use attack 1, or move and then use attack 2. So let's use some examples here on board. So if I were to say use a move action, I could go 1, 2, 3. And that would be that's one of my actions. Then I can use another action on an ability. So for example, he has Brutal Impact or Shield Blast. I can use that as my second if I want to use that, but I can't use move twice, I can't use Brutal Impact twice, I can't use Shield Blast twice, for example. So what players need to do is figure out what is the optimal moveset within their actions. So is it move and attack? Is it use attack 1 and attack 2 combined? Or is it move and use attack 2? That sort of thing. After that, players can also use things like artifact cards. Artifact cards have cooldowns on them, so they have interesting abilities. Like for example, one of them is I can switch spots with a teammate or an opponent. Once I use that though, I have a 3-round cooldown, which means I have to wait 3 more turns to use this card again. Also, we have relic cards. These are drawn at the beginning of each turn. Each team gets 1. And you can have up to 3 cards in your hand. Once you have 3, you can't draw anymore. So you have to use them. These cards, the relics and the artifacts, are both independent of actions, meaning I could move, let's say I'm here, 1, 2, 3, and then I could attack, and then I could play all 3 of my cards if I wanted, and my artifact card. But once I did that, that means that my hand is now free, and my next turn I would get to draw 1 card and build all the way up to 3, but again, you can only have 3 relics max on those. So there you go, that's one example of how you do movement and how you do actions with abilities in Brutality. Okay, so let's do an example turn to show you guys how this stuff would work. Let's say it's my turn, so I will draw a relic card. My card is Intimidation. One opponent champion loses 2 movement speed next turn and quakes in fear at your savagery. This must be played on your turn. So let's say that I wanted to use this and I play it on the Gravekeeper. So next turn, if he wants to move, it's going to reduce his move amount, which is 4, by 2, so he can only move 2. So that's my card that I'm playing for there. Then I get to choose my 2 actions. So my 2 actions are going to be that I use my move on this character, 1, and then I'm going to use Brutal Impact for my second action. Brutal Impact is I stab someone on a space touching the God Killer, then lift and slam them to another space, my choice, touching the God Killer. This causes 2 damage if hit by the attack. So I impale and then slam him here, let's say. And then I can use this character to do an attack. So Ophelia the Conjurer has something called Spectral Blast. Ophelia points her fallen Saint Blade and blasts spectral energy 3 spaces in a row, front, left, or right, with ghost flames. Anyone hit by the attack will receive 3 damage. So 1, 2, 3 spaces. So that means that he got hit by hit for 2 by the God Killer by Brutal Impact. And then Ophelia hit him with Spectral Blast for 3. So now he has taken 5 damage. So that means from the 20 that he had, we now subtract 5, he has 15 health left. Now, I still haven't used all of my moves from my move action. So let's say I want to move here and here. And then with her, she hasn't used anything at all. So I could use a move to move her out of the way, or I could say summon Ghost Knights, which is my other move. But because she's sort of a glass cannon, we're gonna move her out of the way. 1, 2, 3. And then from that point, that would be my turn. And it would now be my opponent's turn to pick. Now, I didn't use any artifact cards, but I could have if I wanted to during that time. I'm deciding to hold on to them for now. All right, so let's look at this from the opponent's perspective and how they would utilize their actions to fight against this team. So we would draw our relic card, and our relic card is Savage Brutality. This is an OP card. These are really powerful cards. They're not as rampant in the decks, but if you pull one, it's good stuff for you usually. In this case, Savage Brutality adds 2 damage to 1 special attack of your choice and utilize it on your turn. So let's go ahead and use this one. But we're in an interesting spot because last turn we played Intimidation on the Gravekeeper. So that means that he is reduced by 2 movement speed if he wants to move. So no matter, we're gonna move him back here, 1, and then we're gonna dig this way. So he has something called Buried Alive, where he digs 2 spaces and he buries anybody that is in these spaces. And luckily for me, the God Killer happens to be right there. So we technically bury him. And we're gonna put, this is a temp marker of what those will look like. But he is now under the Gravekeeper. If he wants to get out next turn, he's gonna have to spend a movement point to dig out, and then he will be able to kind of move again. But otherwise he stays under there, and if he doesn't get out of there, he takes 1 more damage from suffocation. So I used my move action, and then I did my Buried to stay on top of him. So that's a pretty good move, but we'll also add this 2 damage to that as well. So that means that he was buried alive and I landed on top of him, which means it's 2 damage from here and then 2 damage from the card. So that's 4 damage in total to the God Killer. And that was pretty good, but now we can also utilize Sadie here. So Sadie will move 1, 2, 3, and then we'll use a move called Hurtling Devastation. So Sadie has a demigod baby. And the demigod baby allows her to use some pretty interesting mechanics. So she throws her Saint's Blade and it impales into the enemy, and then the child recalls that sword with the player attached to it. So they come this way. So that does 1 damage for the hit, and it also does a damage for every space that they were pulled. So in this case, the Conjurer was pulled 3 spaces. So not a bad turn. That means it's 3 damage against the Conjurer. So she has 16 health. She now has 13 health. So let's see if we can use any of these artifact cards. Sadie doesn't have any damage on her, so we don't need this, but she has a heal artifact. There's also one that if we wanted to use for the Gravekeeper, he can switch spots with an opponent within 2 spaces. So he doesn't have anybody he can switch with, so again, we'll save those for a later point in time. But that's pretty much the turn for them. All right, let's talk about environmental hazards. Environmental hazards are placed at the beginning of the game by both teams. So my team would pick where they would like to put something. The opposite team would put a hazard where they would like to put it. The only places you can't put them are the base rows, which are where the opponents start on the corner or your team starts on the corners. You can't put anything in there. You can just put it in these areas. So we've decided to put down a spiked wall trap here and some flames here. So let's utilize these and show off the differences between them. Spiked wall is a line of sight blocker, which means that you can't walk through it. It means that you can also knock people into it and they will bounce off of it and take damage. So for example, if I combine this with abilities that the characters have, they can do some serious damage. So the God Killer here has a move called Shield Blast. Shield Blast has a pulse of energy that comes out from his relic shield, and it knocks back the opponent 2 spaces. So in this case, we have a spiked wall right here. He's going to use Shield Blast, and it knocks him back 1 and 2, but they stop right there. There is basically a line of sight blocker with this, and it adds 1 damage to the attack. So these spikes will add on top of your already pretty awesome damage. So he knocked him back for 2 damage, plus a spike wall is 3. Now, the same thing here can apply with the flames. So Sadie has the ability Hurtling Devastation, where she throws the sword into their opponent, and then the opponent is pulled back to Sadie. So in this case, sword is thrown into Ophelia, she is pulled into the flames, and because this is not a line of sight blocker, she can stay on top of the flames and take damage. So that's 3 damage for the attack from Sadie, and then 1 damage for the fire. Certain characters also have leap abilities, which allow them to jump over things. So for example, the spiked wall here, if you have a leap ability, like the assassin, you can actually jump over this and avoid the damage. But there are other traps, for example, like the pike trap, which shoots up spikes, and anybody that jumps in there or walks over it is hit and then pulled down and then stops their movement there. Thanks for sticking around and checking out the instructions on how to play Brutality. If you want to learn more, you can go to www.brutalityboardgame.com. Thanks again.
Back Brutality today for an epic board game experience for you and your sadistic friends. And we'll see you on the battlefields of Brutality.